Today we're going to talk to Claude and ask him how we can achieve our goals. I'm really curious of what Claude will say. So as you can see, I'm recording the screen in here. It says, welcome back, Alan. That's me. And let me see if I can actually talk to and state hello. Perfect. I want you to help me to achieve my goals. I struggle with starting a lot of projects, a lot of goals, and never finishing them. I've tried many different strategies, smart goals, these goals, and nothing worked. What do you have for me that will help me to achieve my goals this time? I can even tell you what is my goal right now. I want to be consistent with publishing a video every single week on YouTube for an entire year. I've struggled with this in the past. It is or was a big challenge for me, and I'm hoping that you can help me. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I will be happy to answer them for you. Boom. Let's see what Claude can do, because I know that many people, including myself, sometimes I strategize, sometimes I brainstorm, but I know there are some limitations. What you see here is in real time. And yeah, let's see what Claude will do. Now, this is not an assessment of all the LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, and others out there. For now, I'm just working with Claude Pro, which I know is a very competent model. I think is one of the best, if not the best. So then I would expect that whatever we get must be really at the top. Until Claude comes up with a strategy, I don't know. Right now, I think Claude is thinking like, man, like this guy tried everything and didn't work. Like, what should I say? But what I'm going to do is read through what looks like the strategy, the help, the guidance that it can give me, and I will make comments along the way. Hopefully you're going to find this useful. Just keep in mind that I'm looking at the monitor and the camera is here, so then you're going to see me like this. There we go. We have an answer. So here is the thing I'd say first, and you can push back. I'm not going to hand you another framework. You're a coach. Oh shit, it knows. This is funny because I'm trying to fool him, but he has memory of past conversations. You're a coach. You've run a smart goals drill, and the reason none of it stuck probably isn't that you picked the wrong acronym. So let me say what I actually think is going on, and then I want to ask you one question. For now, really good. It looks like it wants to get information first, which is very important because you cannot really help anyone without really understanding what is the current situation and what are you working with, like what are the challenges and the context. The goal, as you phrase it, every single week for an entire year is a brittle goal. Okay, let me see where it goes with this. It's 52 for 52 or it's broken. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. And here is the trap. Almost nobody fails this goal in week 1. Yeah, most probably. They fail in the week after the first miss. Agreed. You miss week 6 because life happens and now the streak is dead. The clean story is ruined and the whole thing quietly loses its meaning. The failure isn't the miss. It's the lack of the recovery rule. Oh, I see where you go with this. So the first design principle is to build the goal to survive misses rather than to prevent them. Wait a second. Oh God. Let me just be very careful with what I understand from this because I don't want to judge unfairly. So the failure isn't the miss. This makes my head go a bit like, It's the lack of recovery rule. Yeah, okay, so this part is actually, it's partially true because it almost emphasizes or puts up the idea that, you know, if you skip, if you miss, that's not really the problem, which is partially true from the perspective that it is coming from, meaning if you fail, at least make sure that you don't stop, because you really fail when you stop trying, which is true. But it doesn't mean that missing or skipping is okay, is allowed, is not really the problem, because again, it's a different angle that he is coming from, which is, you know, it's still valid, but it's not really the only way, as I'm going to address a bit later. Like I said, the failure isn't the miss, it's the lack of recovery rule. So the first design principle is to build the goal to survive misses rather than to prevent them. You see, up until here, Claude has its own approach. And this approach is, look, it doesn't matter if you miss. It matters for you to continue, to recover, to come back on track, because the default is that you're always going to somehow fall off track. You're going to deviate at one point or another, and that is almost guaranteed. And I agree. But at the same time, and if you have watched any of my videos, I talk about what I call, for now, hopefully I'm going to find a better term, an absolute commitment. An absolute commitment is starting a challenge that you're going to do every day, no matter what. And the value is not, like, the value is the compounding effect that you get showing up every day over a long period of time and not skipping, not missing, like not allowing that to happen. Considering that a failure, of course, that if you do, let's say, like in my case, I've been running for almost 2000 days straight, no exceptions. Today it was day 1976. And if you calculate, I started on 1st of January 2021. I never skipped a single day, and I took it as an absolute commitment, like no matter what. Well, if I would skip a day, it would have to happen in extraordinary conditions, because I've been in, you can imagine, like, this is more than 5 years, almost 5 years and a half. In 5 years and a half, I had multiple chances to find great excuses why I should skip today. You can imagine, I went through sickness, back pain, leg pain, all sorts of pains, all sorts of situations, moving countries, going, traveling, all sorts of conflicts, and I never skipped. But if I would skip, it would have to be under, like I said, in extraordinary conditions. Like, I don't know, you have an accident, you break your leg, and it makes it physically impossible to run. Otherwise, for me, I would consider it a failure in the sense of I do not allow skips, I do not allow breaks, right? But it doesn't mean that after 5 years, if I have to skip a day, and the keyword here is I have to, I don't see myself as a failure. I don't stop running. Basically, if that happens, I will recover and come back on track as soon as possible. That's the goal here. So Claude has here just like an approach that is more like suitable for most people. I agree with this, suitable for most people, because it's not extreme. It allows you to skip. It allows you to go like, you know what, if I'm going to fall off track, that it's okay, but I have to have a rule, like a recovery rule, to come back on track and continue, which would work for most people. But here is where it's the problem with this approach. When you allow for skips and you allow for this idea that, you know what, it doesn't really matter if I skip, I have to have a recovery rule, for most people, because most people start goals and challenges and commitments exactly with the same mindset, at one point they prioritize the skipping. The skipping becomes the normal, the acceptable, the what they can tolerate. And when that idea is in your mind that, yeah, you know, it's okay, I just have to have like a recovery rule, well, you are always going to be in recovery mode. And this is something that, again, sounds good on paper, but it allows for skipping, for finding excuses, and that is really the reason why most people fail. But let's continue. I really want to see where it goes with it. So the first design principle is to build the goal to survive misses rather than to prevent them. Okay, for example, 52 videos this year batched and banked ahead. Okay, or weekly with the tree skip token I'm allowed to spend, not weekly, no exceptions forever. I feel like it makes it a bit too complicated for me. What I've learned so far, especially with my challenge, is that you have to keep things simple, very, very simple. When you make an absolute commitment, like I'm not going to skip no matter what, if I commit to something daily, I will have to find ways to do it daily. If I commit to something weekly, like in this example, I have to, at the end of the week, I have to produce that, or, well, the streak is broken. And there must be consequences to that, because when we don't have skin in the game and we allow for like, if I skip, I will just recover and blah, 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 eventually skipping becomes the default, and that's really the problem here. Second, the binding constraint, the binding constraint is almost always the cost of one video, not your willpower. If each one takes you 8 hours and a perfect setup, no discipline survives 52 reps. And your instinct as someone who cares about craft will be to make them expensive. The leverage is the opposite. Brutally lower the bar for a single unit. Fixed format, lower the production polish, batch record several in one sitting. You've already got good gear and you're a genuine strong speaker, which means your real risk isn't capability, it's perfectionism dressed as standards. So here where I believe Claude is actually right. Setting rules and boundaries and limits that would make it very clear what makes it a skip or what makes it a hit. Basically, I did it or I didn't do it. That's very good, because then you're going to understand exactly what are the limits. If I say just record the video every single week, I also have to clarify, is it going to be like 5 seconds video? That's very different than 30 minutes video, right? If I say I'm going to run every day, is it I'm going to run like 5 meters or I'm going to run a minimum of 1.6 kilometers, let's say, which would be a mile? Setting those limits and clear boundaries will help you to understand exactly and have clarity if you're still on track, if you're still doing it, or you're negotiating with yourself. So that part is correct. So lower production polish, batch record and several in one sitting, all of that is actually good. Except this part with batch record several in one sitting. Well, here is the point. The value here is not really to record. Let's just take like an extreme example. I'm recording 52 videos on 1st of January 2026, let's say. And then I'm going to publish them every single week. And at the end of the year, my challenge looks like, oh, I succeeded. But the goal here is for you to show up. It's not like, let me record now a bunch of videos and then I don't have to show up. No, because you are building you're building your spirit. You are building self-control. You are building this ability to show up no matter what. And that is a lot more valuable than having at the end of the year 52 videos. You see, in any challenge, on one side you have the visible, like what you produce, like in this example, producing 52 videos at the end of the year. That's the visible. But every single time you also have the invisible, and the invisible is a lot more important than the visible. In fact, the invisible is what controls the visible. And the invisible here would be that act of you showing up every single week for 1 year, which is very different. If you record 52 videos in 1 day and then you just publish them, you have not really learned the act of showing up. You have not really learned how to deal with yourself when otherwise things happen, life turns chaotic, and you are going to be tempted to negotiate with yourself on week 37, right? If you record everything on day 1, well, there is no negotiation. There is no opportunity for you to learn how to manage yourself. And again, That is the invisible value, but I would argue that the invisible value is a lot more important than the visible, the result, the videos, the money, the whatever you want to produce with showing up. Showing up is the skill that you are building. So here, notice that Claude tries to prioritize the result, the 52 videos, but it doesn't really understand that we as humans, we are really like, in order to master our outer world, the results that we want, we have to first master our inner world. And that goes through self-mastery, spiritual mastery. Like you're building your soul in that that conflict that you have to show up every single time when it's difficult and when it's hard. And I would say that that's actually the most important. And on commitment over habits, I know that's a view you hold. He knows. I half agree. Great. Commitment set the non-negotiable, but commitment is a finite battery. Let me be very careful, because here Claude goes a little bit against what I said, and I'm perfectly okay with that, but I want to address it fairly for both sides. So he says, on commitment over habits, I know your view you hold. Let me clarify this in case you didn't see the video. I said that to design your life, to build a life that you want, habits are overrated. And in a nutshell, my argument is that habits are bound to your current environment. You wake up in the same bed, the toothbrush is in the same place, you go to the same bathroom, same door on the same side. You are in a familiar environment that is conducive to your habit. But the moment when the environment changes, life turns chaotic, you lose your house, you lose your job, you move places, you become homeless, who knows? All the habits that you have are useless, because they're almost like mushrooms after the rain. If there is no water, well, the mushrooms would not really grow. And if you change the environment, well, then you are going to grow something else. So habits are very much useful to facilitate, to really automate simple processes, but they're useless for building your life. When you want to choose a direction and you go like, you know what? I need an important radical change in my life. You're not going to build habits for that. You're going to build an impossible commitment to break, a commitment that is absolute by nature, and you don't skip it no matter what. That is the only way you can carve a new direction in life. And that's my take, right? Because when, let's say, same situation, right? You have decided that every day you are going to write 5 pages, right? And let's say that you have lost your house, you lost your job, you're homeless. If that is a commitment and not a habit, the moment when you realize, oh shit, I'm homeless, you are going to go to a stranger and go like, sorry, can I borrow from you a pen and paper? Because this is not a habit. This is not something that just happens. It's something that you have designed for it. And like, in fact, you have decided with ultimate, like determination, and then everything else in your life is going to reorganize around what you have decided. So if you have lost your house and you're in an unfamiliar environment and your life is completely different from one day to another, which can happen, the commitment is still there, because you just have to find a different way. Okay, I no longer have a house, I no longer have my computer, I no longer have this, but what can I do? And I don't know, just go to a stranger and you ask, sorry, can I borrow a pen and paper? Because that is really what you have committed to. A habit in there would just be like, I don't know, it just doesn't happen. Habits happen automatically. Commitments is something that you do because you have decided, and you don't let any negotiation along the way, no matter what happens. That's very different. So that's my take. So Claude says, on commitment over habits, which I say, that's my view. I know that's your view you hold. I half agree. He's just trying to say nicely, I don't agree. Commitment sets the non-negotiable. Yes, but commitment is a finite battery. I disagree, because you see, when I run every day and I sometimes have difficult days, like I had in, I think, November or December 2021. It was the first year when I decided I'm going to run every day for an entire year. I had 2 weeks back then with running with back pain, intense back pain, where I would limp to the place where I would run, and I would have to run every day 5 kilometers, no exception. Well, if the commitment would be a finite battery, I would definitely have run out of that battery in the first few months. But the thing is that commitment is a rechargeable battery. If you want to take it from this perspective, it's a finite battery, but it's a rechargeable battery. And that means that you will have to recommit, like really master that energy battery, right? We are using this example. You have to master that energy exactly on the same time frame that you have committed to. If you have committed to something to do every day, especially when it's difficult, you are going to have to go like, you know what, today is a difficult day. I know that I'm going to be super busy. Let me do it now. I'm generating that energy right now. I'm pushing against the obstacles that are coming my way, or I'm predicting that they're going to come, and I'm still prioritizing for that. But it's what you generate. It's not like it's a battery, it just like runs out. It's like, oh my God, I ran out of commitment. No. As you generate commitment on day one, the same energy, but again, renewed, because you are the generator. You're not having something that comes to you. You are generating that energy. You are generating that intensity. Same energy, you have to regenerate it again the next day and the next day and the next day. And it's a everyday thing, or in this example, every week or every month. But if it's a finite battery, it's a rechargeable one, and it's your responsibility to recommit and regenerate all that energy right now in the moment, so you can do it, so you don't skip. So you see, Claude doesn't really understand this because, well, it's an LLM. It doesn't really have that human experience. All that we can generate inside is just an understanding based on words and concepts and ideas, but not much of that. It doesn't have the real experience as we do. Systems are what let you stop re-spending willpower every single week. Oh, that is extremely wrong. Again, I'm going so much against this because I know that systems, it's almost like they're as weak, almost, they're a bit stronger than habits, but they're as weak as habits. Because the system, again, think about the word system. This is what Claude says. Systems are it's like a framework of actions based on a set context and environment. Well, what happens when that current context and environment goes away? If you have a system, I'll give you an example. I write every day 5 pages, right? And you have a system that you open your laptop, and inside the laptop you have a certain app that you use to write and all of that. What happens if someone steals your laptop? What happens if you become homeless? Where is the system? The system is based on those familiar things that you can access. And when they go away, the system goes away. And then without commitment, you are not going to find new solutions. This is where it gets it absolutely wrong. So again, the statement from Claude was, systems are what let you stop re-spending willpower every single week. Yeah, that is true only. So it's true. I want to be fair towards Claude and the statement that it makes. What it says is true only when you can maintain the same environment. The same environment, same laptop, same app, same this, like the same structure, and almost like a ritual in which you do things, the system, right? You have a certain structure. I do this and that in exactly the same order, same fashion, and it's a system. Great. It works, and Claude is right here, but only when everything goes smooth. The system is still in place. Life is not turned upside down. But guess what? Life is full of changes, and we live in times where more and more, at an accelerating pace, life becomes more chaotic, more unexpected things happen. Imagine what happened in the past years with all the AI stuff and a lot of new things happening, and to the point where people no longer have the certainty of tomorrow. We lost this ability to even have like something that we can rely on. It's constant changes. Everything is changing very fast. We're always constantly trying to to catch up, and yeah, it's all of this is accelerating. Well, in a world that like it becomes more and more unexpected, more chaotic, do you expect that your systems and your habits and your current life setup is going to just be remain perfectly there so you can have the habits, so you can have the systems? No. In this new world, only an absolute commitment can work, because the change and the variables are going to become more and more volatile, to the point that the only thing that will keep you on track is an absolute commitment. So again, from my view, I want to stay humble, but this is what I strongly believe Claude is wrong about this. And I understand why, because, well, Claude, like takes information from the internet and puts it together in a way that it sounds good. But there is a big difference between what sounds good on paper and what works for us humans. We are a lot more complex than that, and we are living more and more complex lives. So I think that this is not going to cut it. So systems are what let you stop respending willpower every single week. If you have to redecide to publish each week, you lose. Yes, I agree. I don't decide to publish every week, but every week I'm renewing, I'm regenerating that energy from this overarching goal, overarching commitment I have. It's almost like if, let's say, on 1st of January, I decide, like I did, to publish a video, at least a video every single week for 1 year. At that point is a commitment. It helps me, it gives me that energy and boost for the first weeks or even months, right? But on week 37, I only have to, like, my initial commitment is just a memory, it's just awareness. I know about it, but it's not really that thing, the action that I took back then, months ago, that helps me right now to, when it's difficult, when the week is chaotic, to organize myself and to apply myself, to find solutions and not excuses, and to publish. No. What helps me right now with week 37, let's say, it's a recommitment coming from that awareness, that larger commitment that I have. But it's not that which makes me, like, it's not that back then that makes me now to do and take the action. So let me see where I am. Commitment sense is non-negotiable. I read that. You lose. The point of the system is to make the decision already made. Well, you see, the decision is already made, correct. But how many times we make decisions and then we go back on them? Like, how many, like, imagine in your life, just I want you to remember, like, try to remember from your past. This is not something that I'm inventing. You consider your past, people in your past. How many people have broken promises to you? And when they made those promises, they look like they are going to keep them. Like they were convinced. They look like, oh my God, I make this promise to you, and it's like almost like an oath. It's a vow. But nonetheless, people break promises all the time. They undo decisions all the time. So then it's not about making the decision again or not. It's like, are you going to keep the decision? Because there is a difference between making a decision at point A, 1st of January 2026, and keeping that the same decision, executing on it on week 37, I don't know how many months later. Now, my question, Claude has a question for me. My question, because the right prescription depends entirely on this. The previous times you tried, what exactly did it break? Did you run out of ideas? Did each video just take you too long until you burned out? Or did you miss 1 week and the whole thing lost its grip on you? Yeah, so right now what Claude tries is to just see, like, okay, where exactly did you fail last time? So then we can prepare for that. But again, the miss, what I would call here, the miss from Claude here is this. You cannot really prepare every single time for the new thing that will happen. If I tell Claude right now, oh, last time when I failed, I don't know, I tried to make the video too long, and now Claude is going to be like, oh, okay, so then you can make like a minimum, you can adjust for that, blah, 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 right? That's the solution. It's like patching. Yeah, but life, it constantly shows up with unexpected elements, and you are going to, if this is the, like, if the solution here is just this patching mode, let me see what worked and or how you failed the last time, and then do it again, and you have this recovery mode, you are always going to be in recovery mode, because There is always going to be new challenges, things that you're not expecting, that because you are in this mode, like, oh, it's okay to fail, it's okay to stop, I will just recover, I'll come back on track. If you're in that mode, you are constantly going to have reasons why you have failed, you have stopped, and then now you're in recovery mode, you try again, and it's like ups and downs, like you start and you stop, you start and you stop, and it's like never ending. You see what I'm proposing here? The difference is you never stop and you never give yourself excuses. It's very different, and it's very simple. The solution is beautiful because it's simple. All of this is just like trying to work out, like, my God, what did work in there? Like, hey, how about you make an absolute commitment and you are going to do it? Simple as that. This is what I'm proposing. Let me continue with this one more time. Let me see the time, 31 minutes. You know what? Instead of this, because it might take me another 30 minutes, let me just wrap up just this video for the initial setup. Like, that is how Claude would approach a person that started many challenges, started many different projects, had many different goals, but at the same time, and every single time, for whatever reason, they stop. The approach here is just a continuation of the same patterns. You see, it's just like, it's dressed up nice language and sounds good on paper, but it's not really what works. This is definitely not what works, because this is exactly what everyone is trying. Everyone gives themselves, whenever they start a commitment, they make a promise, they have a challenge, they have a goal. It's not really absolute. They have failed from day one. And literally in the very solution that Claude comes with, it's like, look, it doesn't matter if you skip, it matters how you come back on track. And that sounds good, but it doesn't work, because for us humans, it becomes an always coming back on track until you no longer come back on track. This is what it misses. So the solution here is very different. And, you know, I would not expect from an LLM to understand this, because it doesn't have the human experience, but it definitely speaks to why so many people cannot really stay committed. Because our understanding, like system level, is that, well, we talk about commitments as if they are absolute, but in reality, in our execution, they are never absolute. That's why think about the word commitment, right? The word commitment, by its nature, I commit, like it's just like done. I commit to this, like there is no negotiation or nothing. The word commitment by nature has a sense, or like has a meaning of absoluteness. But the fact that oftentimes we have to use, you know, like strength adjectives like absolute commitment, ultimate commitment, the strong commitment. Like, what's the difference between a strong commitment and the commitment? You understand? That is the problem. Is the problem that we humans are finite creatures, but we are capable of absolute, like we can imagine, we can understand the absolute, but we are not really capable of it. Meaning we can understand what it means to do something in absolute terms, to commit and do it, but in our capacity, we constantly fail at this. And this is why we try to bridge this gap with all these words: decision, choice, commitment. My God, like there are so many, devotion, dedication, all sorts of words that point to the same thing. Like if you are devoted to something, you do it, right? But for us humans, it's like you are devoted to something until you're not. You're committed to something until you're not. You made the decision until you take it back. But there is no word in the dictionary that points to an absolute commitment. Again, when I say absolute commitment, it's exactly because I do not have a word that points to the concept that I'm pointing at. And yeah, as you can see, even Claude doesn't really consider this option, because it considers how most people do it. Like it tries to, you know what it does with this solution? It takes the default for most people and tries to make it pretty, tries to make it work. When in reality, that whole paradigm has to be eradicated, because it doesn't work. No matter how much, you know, like mental gymnastics you do, like, oh, you should do this, and the video is like this, you have to like all sorts of complications, when in fact it should be simple. Make simple rules, like decide what you want to do on what time frame. Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Whatever. Then establish clear boundaries. In what conditions is it clear that you have done it or you didn't? It's a check or it's a miss. When all of that is clear, then it's a matter of like, do not believe any excuses. Like excuses, they sound true, but they are absolutely false. And here is why. When people say, for example, let's say they have a commitment and say like, yeah, but my kids were hungry, right? I couldn't. Yeah. The fact that your kids were hungry or your kids did not eat, that is true. But you know where the excuse actually exists? It's not in the fact, because the fact is true. We are using truth to hide behind meaning that we construct that is ultimately not true. That is the excuse that I'm talking about. Right? So when you have to do this and you go like, oh, but my kids did not eat, which is true, you give yourself the excuse, you give yourself the possibility to go like, you know what, I failed, but I couldn't because my kids did not eat. Yes, that is a fact and that is true. But the meaning that, oh, if my kids did not eat, which is true, means, again, means we draw like a straight line between truth and falsehood, and then we make falsehood as true as the truth. And this is how we deceive ourselves, right? The meaning, oh, if my kids did not eat and I cannot do this, that meaning, that direct line between truth and what I construct, the meaning that I construct based on it, that's the excuse. And that's what I mean when I say excuses are by definition absolutely false, because we confuse an excuse with truth. We confuse facts with meaning. And yeah, for as long as we do that, we are always going to spin in the same circles. We make commitments that are not really absolute, and then we're just looking for reasons that we have tried really, really, really hard, but we couldn't somehow, and oh my God, life is unfair and all of this, and somehow we give ourselves very good reasons for why we couldn't. But when you realize that an absolute commitment, when done right, it has no excuses. Like literally the moment when you skip, it's on you. The moment when you did not do it, it doesn't matter what happened. It's all in your control. You could prepare in advance, you could design, you could try to find solutions. But the problem is that most people find excuses. And for as long as we do that, we will never really have any clear direction, any clear sustained strategy in our life, because ultimately we're not really committed.